Ethan Cole stood in the center of a gleaming recruitment arena, his daughter's backpack hanging from one hand. 30 seconds later, a 240-pound professional fighter lay unconscious at his feet. No one had really seen him move. One moment the champion had charged in, fists raised, grinning like this would be easy. The next he was on the floor, gasping, his arm bent at an angle that made the front row wince. Ethan didn't gloat. He didn't even look down. He just stepped back, adjusted the strap on his shoulder, and glanced up toward the observation deck, where a woman in a charcoal blazer stood frozen, her tablet halfway to her mouth. If you're watching this, do me a favor. Tap that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Because in a minute I'm going to tell you how a broke single dad with a 6-year-old asleep in a rusted-out sedan became the most dangerous man in a billion-dollar company. The morning had started badly. Lily had woken up quiet, quieter than usual, which was saying something, because Lily hadn't said more than a handful of words a day since her mother left. She was 6. She noticed everything and spoke almost none of it. Ethan had spent 20 minutes coaxing her into her shoes, promising her they wouldn't be long, promising her the light-up sneakers instead of the fairy wings she wanted to wear to his job interview. He pulled into the parking structure of Meridian Systems at 9:47, 13 minutes late, a juice box leaking in his jacket pocket. The building didn't look like the kind of place that hired men like him. All glass and steel, sharp edges, the kind of logo that didn't need words. Because if you had to ask, you didn't belong. Ethan had been to a lot of interviews in the past year. Most ended the same way. A polite smile, a firm handshake, an email 2 days later thanking him for his time. He wasn't expecting this one to be different. Lily tugged his sleeve in the lobby and whispered, "Why is everyone wearing the same clothes?" She wasn't wrong. Every person they passed wore some shade of black or gray or navy pressed shirts. Shoes that cost more than Ethan made in a month back when he was still making anything. They liked to match, he told her softly, and steered her toward the elevators. A woman in heels gave them a look. Quick, dismissive, the kind that said you're lost. Ethan ignored it. He was used to that look. The receptionist on the security floor was younger. Kinder, she smiled at Lily, asked her name. And when Lily didn't answer, she slid a lollipop across the desk anyway. Lily took it, and Ethan felt a small knot in his chest loosen. At least someone here didn't treat them like a mistake. Her badge said Priya. Ethan didn't know it yet, but Priya was about to matter more than anyone in that building. "I don't see childcare listed in your file," Priya said gently. "Is someone picking her up?" "She stays with me," Ethan said. His tone was flat, but not unkind. "If that's a problem, I'll leave now." Priya hesitated, then nodded. "She can watch from the observation area. No exceptions." Ethan crouched down to Lily's level. "You sit up high where it's safe. And if you need me, you wave. Just wave, and I'll come. Every time." Lily looked at him with those big, careful eyes and slowly raised one small hand and waved. He kissed the top of her head. The trial space wasn't a gym. It was a small stadium. Padded floor, white competition lines, an observation deck with theater seating already half full. Ethan counted 12 other candidates. All men, all younger, most by a decade. Compression shirts, name-brand sneakers, the easy confidence of people who knew they looked good. A few glanced at him, at his faded gray shirt and his discount store running shoes, and looked away, unimpressed. He didn't blame them. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd been scraping by too long. A short, thick-necked man in a company polo stepped onto the mat with a clipboard. "My name is Doyle," he said. "I run security here, and I don't waste time. You face one opponent. 3 minutes. Impress me, you move on. Bore me, you're out." He glanced at his clipboard. "First up. Cole. Ethan Cole." Every eye in the room turned. A few candidates smirked. Doyle looked him up and down and frowned. You're 32. Any recent combat experience? No. Any certifications? No. Doyle's frown deepened. Then what the hell are you doing here? Ethan met his eyes. I need a job. For a moment, Doyle just stared. Then he turned toward the deck and raised his voice. Miss Ashford, we've got a walk-in with no credentials. You want me to skip him? She stood at the front of the deck, arms crossed. Mid-20s, dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't. Charcoal blazer, no jewelry except a watch that caught the light when she moved. Nora Ashford, 26 years old, chief executive of Meridian Systems, the youngest in the company's history. The articles called her a prodigy. The forums called her a lot of other things. She'd taken over when her father stepped down, and half the room was still waiting for her to fail. She looked at Ethan. Really looked. The kind of look that stripped away excuses and saw what was underneath. Let him try, she said. Doyle shrugged. You're up against Rourke. Heavyweight. Went pro before we hired him. If you're smart, you'll tap before he breaks something. Rourke stepped onto the mat. 6'3", maybe 240. Shoulders like a wall. He rolled his neck and grinned. No hard feelings, old man. Ethan set Lily's backpack down at the edge of the mat. He didn't stretch. He didn't bounce. He just stood there, hands loose, breathing slow. 3 minutes, Doyle called. Go. Rourke came in fast, a combination that would have dropped most men. Ethan didn't block. He shifted his weight and let the punches slide past by inches. Rourke followed with a hook. Ethan caught the arm mid-swing, twisted, and used the man's own momentum against him. Rourke stumbled, eyes wide, not with fear but surprise. He reset, feinted, shot low for a takedown. Clean, fast, good, Ethan sidestepped, drove an elbow down, and swept his legs out in one smooth motion. Rourke hit the mat hard. He tried to roll, but Ethan was already there, not flashy, not brutal, just efficient. He locked the arm and leaned in close. Tap, Rourke tried to power out. Ethan tightened the hold, and the man gasped and slapped the mat twice. Ethan let go and stood. Doyle stared at his stopwatch. 18 seconds. Ethan picked up the backpack and walked off the mat without a word. On the deck, Nora Ashford didn't move. She'd watched a lot of fighters. Meridian employed over 200 security personnel across 3 continents. She'd sat through demonstrations by former operators, black belts, instructors of every kind. She knew what good looked like. Ethan Cole wasn't good. He was something else. No hesitation, no wasted motion. He hadn't tried to hurt Rourke, he'd just switched him off like a light. And the whole time his face never changed. No anger, no adrenaline, just focus. The kind of focus that only comes from someone who has done far worse and never wants to again. She pulled out her phone and texted Doyle, hire him. Now 3 dots. Then he's got a kid. She thought about the board meeting next week. The investors circling since her father stepped down. The anonymous threats that had started arriving 2 months ago, vague but persistent. She typed, personal detail, reports directly to me. Get him in my office today. Doyle caught Ethan at the elevator. Miss Ashford wants to see you. Lily tugged his hand and looked up, confused. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, Ethan said. I think we might be okay. Nora's office felt lived in. A worn leather couch, shelves crammed with books on engineering and philosophy. A coffee table covered in prototypes. And on one wall, a photograph of an old man in a garage, hands greasy, grinning beside a half-built engine. She noticed Ethan looking at it. My father, she said. He built this company out of that garage. Sit, she offered him the job. $120,000 a year, full benefits, a childcare stipend, flexible hours when possible. "I need someone I can trust," she said. "Someone who doesn't flinch." "Why me?" Ethan asked. "Because you walked into that room looking like you didn't belong, and you left looking like you owned it. And you didn't showboat. You did what needed doing and walked away. That's rare." She leaned forward. "So, Mr. Cole, do you want the job?" Ethan thought about the overdue notice on his kitchen counter. The nights he lay awake wondering how much longer he could hold it all together. He thought about the way Rourke had looked at him, like he was a ghost. "I'll take it," he said. Nora stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to Meridian." He started the next morning. For the first week he shadowed her, learned her schedule, her patterns. She was brilliant. She could talk encryption with her engineers and pivot into a budget fight with her finance chief without missing a beat. But there were cracks, small ones, easy to miss. The way she rubbed her temple when she thought no one was watching. The way she stayed long after everyone else went home, staring at her screen like it held an answer she couldn't reach. She was exhausted and hiding it with everything she had. On the fourth day, the sitter canceled and Ethan had no backup. He expected to be told to take the day off, to not let it happen again. Instead, Doyle sighed and said, "Bring her in. Keep her out of the way." So Lily sat in the corner of Nora's office with a coloring book, quiet as a mouse. Between calls, Nora crouched beside her. "What are you drawing?" Lily held up the paper. It was a house. A yellow house with a red door. But there were no people in it. There were never any people. Not since her mother left. Lily hadn't drawn a single face in almost a year. Nora didn't know that. She just said, "It's beautiful." And Lily, who almost never spoke to strangers, said in a small voice, "That's where we used to live." Ethan went still by the door. It was the most his daughter had said to anyone in weeks. That night, Nora called him back in. "Your daughter," she said. "She's why you took this job. It wasn't a question. What happened to her mother?" Ethan went quiet. "She's not in the picture. By choice. Does it matter? It matters if it becomes a problem," Nora said. "It won't." She studied him a long moment, then nodded. "You're good at this, Cole. Better than I expected. Don't make me regret it. I won't." He didn't tell her the rest. That before Meridian, before Lily, there had been a different life. A team. A man named Vega who'd carried Ethan 2 miles on a shattered ankle and made him promise to name his first kid something soft. Ethan had kept the softness. He'd lost Vega on a road outside a city he wasn't allowed to name, on a day he replayed every time he closed his eyes. That was why he moved the way he moved. Not to win. To make sure no one else got left on a road. He'd walked away from that world so Lily wouldn't grow up inside it. And now, 3 weeks into a security job, he could feel it reaching for him again. Because 2 weeks in, he started noticing the patterns. Small things. A server log that didn't match its timestamp. A keycard entry on a restricted floor at 2 in the morning. A badge that should have been deactivated. A file request that pinged 3 times in an hour, then vanished from the system. Ethan didn't have deep network access, but he had eyes, and he had instincts. Something was wrong. He mentioned it to Doyle, who pulled his own records and swore under his breath. "We've got an investor event in 2 weeks," Doyle said. "Big one. If someone wanted to make a move, that would be the time." The event was black tie. Meridian provided a tux that fit better than anything Ethan had ever worn, and he hated it. He felt like an imposter, like everyone could see the man underneath who'd been eating instant noodles a month ago. Lily thought he looked like a prince. That helped. Nora looked like she'd been born in formal wear. When she walked into the ballroom, every conversation stuttered. Ethan stayed close. And that's when he saw him. A man in a gray suit near the server station. No drink, no conversation. Just watching. Ethan memorized his face. An hour later, he saw him again by the service corridor on the phone, speaking low. When Ethan approached, the man pocketed the phone and walked into a service elevator. Ethan caught the doors. The elevator dropped. The man's breathing changed, shallow and quick, and his hand kept drifting toward his jacket. "Take your hand out of your pocket," Ethan said quietly. "Whatever's in there, leave it." The man's jaw tightened. His hand moved anyway, and Ethan moved faster, pinning the wrist to the wall. Something clattered to the floor. Not a weapon. A phone, a messaging app open, a message half-typed. "Who are you texting?" The man gasped. "I'm with Sable Consulting. We were hired for an audit. Miss Ashford requested it 2 months ago." Ethan checked the man's ID. The photo matched. The company was real. But something still felt wrong, and Ethan let him go with that feeling sitting cold in his gut. He found Nora on the terrace. "There was a man," he said. "Says he works for Sable. Claims you hired them for an internal audit." Nora went very still. "Sable," she repeated. "I didn't hire anyone named Sable." She pulled up the company directory on her phone and scrolled through faces. "Is he in here?" Ethan scanned them. "No. Damn it," she whispered. She looked out over the city, and when she turned back, for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely rattled. "I need you to find out who let him in." "That's not really I don't care what your job description says," she said. "Right now, you're the only person in this building I trust. Can you do it or not?" Ethan thought about Lily, about the stability they'd only just started to build. Then he thought about the way Nora had crouched down and asked about a drawing. "I'll do it," he said. The next days blurred. Ethan barely slept. He dug through access logs and financial records, and Nora worked alongside him, pulling data from systems he didn't know existed. What they found got uglier with every layer. The gray suit was the loose thread. Pull it, and it led to Warren Pratt, Meridian's director of operations, Nora's right hand, the man Doyle had reported the Sable incident to. Pratt's access logs were spotless. Too spotless. In a company where everyone pulled all-nighters, no one's record was that clean. Ethan followed him one evening to a diner on the edge of the city and watched through the window as Pratt slid an envelope across the table to the man in the gray suit. When Pratt left, Ethan slipped into the booth and found a business card wedged in the seat cushion. Blank, except for a phone number. He got a break he didn't expect. Priya, the receptionist, stopped him by the elevators the next morning, glancing around before she spoke. "That key card from the party," she said quietly. "The one that let your Sable guy in. It was cloned from an executive badge. I pulled the assignment log before it got wiped." She slid him a folded slip of paper. "I don't know what's going on, but you were kind to my kid sister once when no one else was. So, be careful." Then she walked away like nothing had happened. The badge had been cloned from Warren Pratt's office, and that night, in Pratt's office, after everyone had gone, Ethan picked the lock on a metal box in the bottom drawer and found a burner phone. One contact, broker, and a chain of messages that made his chest tighten. Payment received. Next drop Thursday. Client wants full schematics by end of month. If Ashford gets suspicious, we accelerate. Ethan photographed all of it. He was halfway to the door when he heard voices in the hall and ducked behind the conference table just as it opened. A woman's voice, sharp and impatient. "If we don't move now, we lose the window." Pratt's voice answered. "Quinn's already asking questions." "She asks questions about everything," the woman said. "And what if she asks the right one?" Silence. Then Pratt. "She won't. I've made sure of it. Better be right, Warren. If this falls apart, you go down, not me." The footsteps left. Ethan waited 2 minutes, then took the stairs. He sent the photos to Nora at 2 in the morning. She was at his door 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes, her face pale. She stepped into his small apartment, taking in the second-hand furniture and the toys scattered on the floor, and said nothing about any of it. She read the messages twice. "It's him," she said. "It's really him. 20 years he worked for this company. My father trusted him." Her voice cracked. "I trusted him." "Not the whole time," Ethan said gently. "The messages only go back 6 months. Whatever this is, it's recent. And if it's recent, we can stop it." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and asked the question he'd been asking himself. "Why are you doing this? You could take Lily and disappear. No one would blame you." Ethan thought about the way Nora had smiled at his daughter's drawing. "Because someone has to," he said. Nora nodded slowly and put out her hand, and he shook it. They were in this now, both of them, all the way. The next morning, Lily was quiet at breakfast, watching him too closely. "Miss Nora came over last night," she said. "It wasn't a question. You were awake. I heard voices. I didn't come out." She paused. "Is Miss Nora okay?" Ethan thought about the way Nora's hands had trembled before she clenched them into fists. "She's going to be," he said. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to her eggs. She noticed everything. It made her sharp. It also made her vulnerable, and he wanted to protect her from all of it. The lies and the betrayals and the ugly truth that people you trusted could turn around and gut you without blinking. But all he could do was teach her to watch, to know when something didn't feel right. He just hoped it wouldn't cost her the softness Vega had made him promise to keep. Nora found the money next. She'd gone through every transaction over 6 months, and there it was, $32 million, moved in pieces to offshore accounts, every payment signed off by Warren Pratt. Every one funneled through her own approval queue. "He told me they were routine expenses," she said. "I signed without reading. I didn't even look." "That's not selling secrets," Ethan said. "That's tearing the company apart from the inside. And whoever's doing it made sure that if the board finds out, they'll assume you knew." They found the top of the ladder on the 3rd night. The sharp voice from Pratt's office belonged to Diane Keller, Meridian's chief financial officer. 50 years old, hired by Nora's father to stabilize the books. The woman who had recommended Pratt for his job in the first place. She'd been to Nora's home for dinner. In 3 months, she'd paid cash for a second house, enrolled her daughter in a school overseas, watched her husband buy a car worth more than most people's homes. None of it illegal, all of it impossible on her salary. Nora stared at the screen and went pale. "I thought she was a friend," she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. Before the confrontation, Nora took him somewhere he didn't expect. Not her office. A small workshop in the basement of the building, the one her father had kept when they moved out of the garage. Tools on the wall, an old engine on the bench, everything exactly where the old man had left it. She sat on a stool and turned a wrench over in her hands. "He used to bring me down here when the board scared him," she said. "Told me a company is just people, and people break, and your job isn't to stop them from breaking, it's to be the one who doesn't." She looked up at him. "I don't know if I'm that person. I think you already are," Ethan said. She didn't answer, but something in her shoulders let go. Just a little. They set the trap at the next investor event. Ethan planted a tracker on Keller's car, and that night she led them to a warehouse in the industrial district, where she handed a flash drive to the man in the gray suit. Ethan recorded all of it. He had enough. The event itself was the storm. 200 people, champagne, Nora on stage giving the presentation of her life while her hands tightened around the microphone. Ethan's phone buzzed. Doyle, movement in the server room, someone downloading everything. He slipped out. In the server room, he found a young analyst at a terminal, fingers flying. The kid bolted. Ethan caught him in 3 steps and pinned him to the wall, not hard, Just enough. Who sent you? The kid's face crumpled. Pratt. He said it was maintenance. He said no one would get hurt. Ethan called Doyle. Lock down the building. Get security to the ballroom. Now. By the time he got back, the lights were out. Emergency backups bathed the room in red. People pushed toward the exits, and Nora stood on the stage, her voice lost in the chaos. Ethan shoved through the crowd and found Keller moving fast toward a side exit. Going somewhere, he said. Her polite mask was gone. In its place was something cold. Get out of my way. Can't do that. She reached into her purse. Ethan moved faster, caught her wrist, twisted, and a small pistol clattered to the floor. She didn't fight. She just stared at him, breathing hard. You have no idea what you've done. Yeah, Ethan said. I do. Security arrived 30 seconds later. He found Nora at the edge of the stage, alone in the red light, staring out at the wrecked ballroom. Overturned chairs, shattered glass, programs scattered like confetti from a parade no one wanted. Is it over? She asked. Yeah, it's over. She nodded slowly. And then, for the first time since he'd met her, Nora Ashford let herself cry. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stood beside her, steady, the way you stand next to someone holding themselves together with willpower and nothing else. The weeks after were paperwork and federal agents. Keller and Pratt were charged with fraud and conspiracy. And in a detention room that smelled of industrial cleaner, Pratt gave them the last name. He looked older, thinner, the expensive suit traded for orange. You were right about everything, he told Ethan. Keller wasn't the top. She answered to a man named Julian Frost. He runs a network, people embedded in companies everywhere, extracting data, selling it to the highest bidder. She pulled me in 2 years ago. I was drowning in debt. I thought I could do it for a few months and get out. He laughed bitterly. But you don't get out. Once you're in, they own you. He slid a folded list across the table. 12 names. Frost near the bottom, last known in the Northwest. He moves a lot, but he's got a pattern. The feds can catch him if they move fast. Nora took the paper and stood. At the door, she stopped. I trusted you, Warren, and you betrayed me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive that. Pratt's face crumpled. I know. The list was real. The lead agent, a stone-faced woman who'd interviewed Ethan after the event, reviewed it and nodded. We've been chasing Frost for 2 years, she said. She looked at Ethan a beat too long. You used to be a ranger. It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't answer. Thought so, she said. You've got the look. In the meantime, stay vigilant. If Frost knows Pratt talked, he might come for you directly. Nora wouldn't hear of Ethan and Lily staying in their apartment. Her building had cameras, a doorman who paid attention. So Ethan packed a bag, picked Lily up from school, and drove to Nora's place, which was nothing like he'd expected. Warm, full of books and plants and mismatched furniture, photos on the walls. Lily walked through it like a museum. When she found a shelf of board games and looked up, actually asking, out loud, can we play one? Ethan felt his chest tighten. They played until she fell asleep clutching a stuffed dinosaur Nora had bought her the week before. Green with purple spots, because Nora had remembered from one quiet sentence that Lily loved them. After Lily was down, Ethan and Nora sat on the couch. I don't know how to do this, Nora said. How to be someone's anything. I've kept people at a distance my whole life because it's safer. But with you and Lily, I don't want to do that anymore. Ethan set down his glass. What do you want? I want to figure it out with you, she said. Is that okay? He thought about the walls he'd built and the promise he'd made on a road he couldn't name to keep something soft alive. Yeah, he said. That's okay. She leaned in, and he met her halfway, and for a moment nothing else in the world mattered. The feds took Frost 2 days later, outside a warehouse in the Northwest, along with 4 of his operatives. The lead agent called that evening. It's over. Enough evidence to put him away for 20 years, and the rest of the network is already flipping to save themselves. What about the threat to us? Ethan asked. Gone. Frost was the only one with the reach to come after you, and he's not going anywhere. Thank you, Ethan said. Thank Pratt. Without his list, we'd still be chasing shadows. Ethan walked into the living room, where Nora and Lily were building a tower out of blocks. Lily looked up. Is it good news? Yeah, kid, it's good news. She grinned and went back to her tower, and Nora crossed the room and hugged him, and something in his chest that had been clenched for a year finally let go. A month later, at Lily's birthday party in the park, Nora showed up with a gift bag so big Lily could barely lift it. Inside was a remote-controlled dinosaur that roared and walked on its own, and Lily screamed with joy and chased it across the grass until she couldn't breathe. You spoil her, Ethan said. Someone has to, Nora answered, and sat beside him in the sun. Then Lily ran back, out of breath, holding a folded piece of paper. She held it out to Nora, careful, like it was fragile. Nora unfolded it. It was a drawing. A yellow house, a big warm sun in the corner. And in front of it, for the first time in almost a year, 3 people. 3 faces. All of them smiling. A tall one, a small one, and a woman with dark hair pulled back. Underneath, in careful crayon, Lily had written a single word. Us. Nora stared at it for a long time, and when she looked up, her eyes were wet. Is this me? She asked. Lily nodded. Then, quietly, in a voice she almost never used with anyone, she said, You don't have to give it back. You can keep us. Ethan felt his throat tighten. His daughter, who hadn't drawn a face in a year, who barely spoke to strangers, had just handed this woman a family and asked her to keep it. Nora folded the drawing like it was made of glass and tucked it into her bag. Forever, she said. Ethan Cole had walked into that arena a year ago with nothing but a backpack and a 6-year-old who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. He'd spent most of his life running from his past, building walls. Certain the only way to keep Lily safe was to keep the world at arm's length. But maybe safety was never the point. Maybe the point was finding people worth fighting for. People who saw you at your worst and chose to stay anyway. And now he had something he never thought he'd have again. Not a perfect thing. Not a thing without complications. But real. Built on honesty and effort and the simple, stubborn choice to keep showing up, even when it's hard. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. So if you made it this far, tell me something in the comments. Who was the one person who stayed when everyone else walked away? I read every single one.